Waiting for your bar exam results? In this upcoming video, I'm going to show you 5 things you can do to make the most effective use of the time while you wait to find out if you passed or failed the bar. I'm Jackson Mummy, the owner and founder of Celebration Bar Review, and for the past 30 years, I've helped thousands of bar takers, people just like you, to make the next bar exam their last bar exam. If you want to know more about how we do that, check out the links on this page after this video. Today, I'm going to be talking about a subject that's going to be on the thoughts of a lot of people right now, and that is, what do you do while you're waiting to get your bar exam results? It's a big topic, and frankly, it's a big concern for many people because it's such a long period of time that some of you have to wait. I wanted to offer 5 things that you can do while you wait for your bar exam result. For those of you that aren't completely familiar with the results process, what happens is that after the bar exams finish around the country, there is a fairly lengthy waiting period. It varies from state to state. Some jurisdictions will have their results out within 5 weeks after the exam. Most jurisdictions typically wait 8 to 10 weeks or 12 weeks, and a few jurisdictions wait even longer than that. What that means is that the July bar exam result for California bar takers, for example, typically don't come out until sometime in November. Georgia bar takers are usually in that same time period. The first big group of students that will get their results typically out of the July or the February exam would be in Florida, and then many of the smaller uniform bar exam administrations. Then after the middle of that first delivery time in mid-September and in mid-April, you're going to have states like Texas and New York, New Jersey, the District of Columbia, lots of big jurisdictions where people take the exam and they're just sitting and waiting. For some of those jurisdictions, we don't actually have a specific release date, and you're literally waiting on pins and needles for the email to show up in your inbox. Thank you, New York. Without overstating it, I think for a lot of people, this is a somewhat frightening time, and a time when you're wondering, what should I be doing? What should be going on during this time? How do you handle the stress, the emotion, all of the feelings that go with this sudden buildup of energy where you're getting ready to take the test, and then poof, the hair's all out of the balloon, and you're in that, well, what do I do now, and how do I get back together in my own life and reconnect with the world? What should I be doing? For some people, the reality is that their results come so quickly, if they're able to just do a mind shut off after the exam, they don't worry about it, they get their results, they move on, and everything is great. But that kind of person is not our typical bar taker today. Most people are not in that circumstance. Instead, in my experience, this waiting time is actually fairly painful for most bar takers. And if you're watching this video today, my guess is it's because you're already going through that process, thinking about the what ifs, having those periodic flashbacks, maybe to the exam itself, and wondering what to do. If you're having those kinds of flashbacks, in a very real sense, you're going through what we would clinically describe as a post-traumatic stress disorder. You've just been through a high-stress, very difficult process, and now you have to process it through emotionally and mentally. You have to literally move on with your life. And if you don't do that, it could be just as debilitating as any PTSD problem. It can destroy your ability to function. But the good news is that it doesn't have to be that way. I've seen many people get tied up in knots during this period of time, but I've also seen a lot of people who figure it out, work it out, and there's some good coping mechanisms that are useful. So what I want to do is share with you 5 specific things you can do as coping mechanisms while you're waiting for your bar exam result. Let's jump into those. The first of these 5 things, without reference to any political organization, is that you need to move on. What I mean by that is that you have to find other interests, other things to replace your bar study time while you're waiting for your result. For many of you, if you came from the world of law, if you're working at a law firm as an attorney already or a paralegal or in some capacity, if you're involved in some form of legal practice, this is pretty easy. You go back to work, you've got plenty to do. Many of you who are waiting for bar results in order to begin or advance your legal careers, however, don't have that option. And as a result, it's a really good time to start looking to what volunteer opportunities might be out there that you didn't have time for before the bar. It's also a good way to network. Just getting out there, getting some practical experience, finding out who you could help, going to your law school, finding out what's available there, what kinds of internships and externships might be available. Getting yourself in some position to do legal work down the road. One of the things that I love is that members of our profession have always been the first responders in major storms and natural disasters and in the area of politics. Getting yourself in a position to do work down the road as a lawyer, a member of the bar, this is the time to get some experience that way. And of course, it's a great time to network and interview if that's going to be part of your future. The reason that I suggest volunteer work right now is because if you're not a licensed attorney, there's obviously a limited range of what you're going to be able to do. The point is that you want to reconnect with the reason that you went through this entire trauma of law school and the bar exam in the first place. In other words, I think you need to get back to what makes you feel valuable, useful, and good when you're doing legal work. It could be a great time for you to do some work on building that career path. If you're really stuck about what to do or where you can help out, contact your local bar association, or maybe the political or community or nonprofit groups that you align with to find out where volunteer opportunities might exist. Areas like legal aid offices, churches, nonprofits, and other community groups really need lawyers, paralegals. They need people who know the law to be involved in a way to help out as clerks and interns. So it's a great opportunity to get involved. Of course, if you've got a political interest, and I guess everyone does these days, I can tell you that candidates and campaigns are always looking for volunteers and helpers, and it's another terrific way to network. There are a lot of people with legal connections involved in politics, and it's a way to participate in what's going on in the world and in your community. You might choose to help out a couple hours a week, and maybe it's going to be more than that depending on the year and the activity. But the point is that you want to move on with your life, and in order to do that, you've got to find some things to be doing, and volunteer work is a great way. Item number 2 is really important. You've got to hug it out. What do I mean by that? Well, if you've got a family, and most of you do, and those of you that don't have family hopefully have some friends, and hopefully you've still got some friends left. But if you've got a family or a job, family, friends, and a job, all three, this is a really good time to reconnect with all of those people. Remember back when you were studying for the bar, there were all those missed date nights and the hangout times and the work assignments that maybe you didn't get to because you just had to study. You might have forgotten a lot about that, but believe me, the people around you, they remember all those missed moments. This waiting period is a great time to make up for some of that by being extra attentive. If you want to spend some additional time with friends and family, coworkers, I schedule a lot of coffee appointments at this time of the year just to catch up with old friends and see what's going on. I like to take vacation time because it helps me refresh and reset. And I actually get the benefit of being able to reflect on what the experience has been. But when I come back, it's important to reconnect. The reality is that you're probably tired from studying for the bar exam and taking the test. But to the rest of the world, here's what happened. You went to the bar exam, you took the bar exam is over, that's enough. Now get back to me, get back to the world. And while you might be struggling a bit with how to make that transition, everyone else is way past that. They have no more forgiveness. What I've said to my students is that your presence here on planet Earth is now required. There are no more excuses. You have to be present, you have to engage. Bar results will come soon enough, but you have to get back into the world. Re-engaging with family and friends and work is critical. If you've been at work and trying to balance your work and bar study, this is particularly true for attorneys in practice who are moving jurisdictions. You've got to go back and take care of your clients. You need to make sure that they know that you're still there and that they know what's going on. Your bosses, your supervisors need to know that you're still there, and your family and friends need to know that too. Having been said, there's obviously a lot going on in the world, and it's a great time to reconnect and see what's going on out there. But just remember, to everyone else, the bar exam was a finite, one-and-done kind of event. It does not have a lingering implication to the rest of the world right now. So when you start saying to everyone around you, well, I'm just waiting for results, the truth is they really don't want to hear about it. It's over, you need to engage, and you can't use studying from the bar as a reason to stay away from those other obligations and connections. If you know that there's a list of items around your house that have to be done, this is probably the time to do them, and you just need to buckle down and get to it. So that's number 2 on our list of 5 things while you're waiting for results. Number 3 is you have to talk it out. Remember, we said you have to move on, you have to hug it out, but now you've got to talk it out. Many bar takers, not all, but many, have to get the test out of their systems. But as I just said in item number 1 about moving on and hugging it out in number 2 for the rest of the world, it's totally over for you. Remember that the people around you, as I said, don't care about you or the bar exam in that context anymore, and they don't want to hear about the test. It's hard. I mean, really, it's hard, but it's also true. They really don't want to hear about the most important test in your life right now. Your friends, your family, your coworkers don't care. And it's not because they don't care about you. It's because you've been studying for the test for 2 or 3 months or 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years or whatever, and the people around you are just over it. Now, they're over it, but you may still have the need to talk about it. There are a couple of things that you can do. One is you can certainly journal it. You can write it out. You can type it out. You can record it as a device. You could actually make a YouTube video about it and transcribe it. You can even talk to small animals, dogs and cats. They will listen attentively. Maybe not so much the cats, but dogs are pretty good. And you can tell them what's going on and how they know and understand your life and what's happened. But at the end of the day, I recognize that most of you will probably not be satisfied with a conversation with a cat. You're probably going to want to talk to a real human being. What I would suggest is that you go into a room with some human in your life and you say, look, I just have to talk this out one single time. I have to go through it. I have to tell you all of the miserable details, and I have to share with you all of the craziness and my concerns and my fears and all of those things. But here's the key. You tell that person, in exchange for that opportunity, I promise you, it's one and done. I'm just going to do it. I'll get it over with. I'm going to purge myself of all of this and get it out of my system. We're going to have this conversation. I'll talk to you. I'll tell you everything that's gone on. I'm going to spill my guts, and then I promise I'm finished. There'll be no more. I'm not going to let this dribble out over time in little pieces, so it's literally one and done. If this person is a spouse, a partner, close family member, maybe you can bribe them with lunch or dinner or something fun. Maybe you could go to a sporting event if it's the right time of year for that. And while you're at the sporting event, I'll regale you with all the bar exam stories, because what could be better than watching a game and talking about the bar exam? As you begin to do those things, I think what you'll begin to discover is that you get it out of your system, you force yourself to be done with it. Because the deal that you made was, I'm going to talk it out and then I'm over it. And you need to stick to that deal, really and truly. If someone is willing to listen to you talk about the bar exam ad nauseum, then you need to be willing to hold up your end of the deal and say, okay, once I've talked this through, I'm really done until the results come out. I hope that that would be useful for those of you that are in a course where you really feel like you've just got to have some opportunity to let it out. If you're in our course, you also have additional forums where you can talk to real human beings. That's our private community group, our group coaching calls. There's even an opportunity to do postmortems after the exam. And those are great resources to be able to talk about your experiences. So I encourage you to participate and take advantage of those opportunities. I do know that many of our students have made connections in group coaching calls, and they tell me that these post-exam coaching calls are an opportunity to say, here's what I saw and heard, here's what I think or feel about the test, and to do that in a supportive environment. So if you're in our course, please make sure that you participate in those calls. I think they're great even after the bar exam. If you're not in our course, perhaps you're in a course that gives you something similar, and that's great. But if you're in one that doesn't allow you to do that, there are obviously other places where you can go online, post your thoughts, write about them, and communicate in a digital world. You've got to talk it out. If you don't get it out, it simply turns into a volcano. The pressure will just keep building and building, and then it's going to erupt, and we don't want that to happen. So, in some way, find a journal, go online, write about it, talk to your dog, talk to a family member. So that's number 3, talk it out. Number 4 in our list of 5 things when we're thinking about what you need to be doing while you wait for bar results is to assume the best. I don't know how to say this with any more emphasis or belief or concern. Bar takers and lawyers generally are terrific at what we call the parade of horribles. You know what that is. It's all the bad things that can happen or would happen or should happen. There's a parade and I'm going to run to the front of the parade to lead it. Now, it's entirely possible that you did fail the bar exam. We know that. But it's also entirely possible that you passed the bar exam. We know that too. And here's the difficulty. There's no way for most of you, and I would say after more than 30 years of doing this, there's probably fewer than 5% of the people I've talked to who definitively for a fact know that they passed their bar exam after they've taken it and before the results come out. The vast majority of people just don't know. Very few people are absolutely certain. Now, there are some people that are absolutely certain that they failed it. And they usually have a reason like my computer stopped working, or I didn't write something, or I got sick, or I didn't finish all the questions. And there could be some reasons why you would absolutely know that you failed. But again, those people are at the margins, and the vast majority of bar takers are in this middle ground where it's not clear if you passed or failed. And so a lot of bar takers say, well, I don't want to jinx myself by saying I passed, or I don't want to make it such that I act like I passed and then I failed and I'm embarrassed and I'm miserable. And the point is that if you have these feelings, you're pretty normal. The people that don't want to talk about their results, I understand. And when people tell me how they did after the test, I would say that most bar takers have a sort of general direction that they're headed in. They'll say, in essence, I feel pretty good about the test, or I didn't feel good about the test. So my fourth tip is that you need to assume the best, because this test has such a narrow range of acceptability of passing, and it's such a fine line distinction about whether you passed or did not pass. I've said in other places you're only one answer away from passing. That's really true. One or two questions might have made the difference, and you simply won't know that in advance. So for your own mental health and sanity, and the sanity of everyone around you, you should assume that you passed. Don't be afraid. And if you're in our course, you should assume you passed based on our historical results. Even if you took one of those horrible big box bar reviews and you did all that crazy IRAC memorization rule, mnemonics, issue spotter stuff, you could still assume that you passed. Now, the statistics aren't so good for repeat bar takers, but you should work under the assumption that this time you did enough to pass. And here's the interesting part. A lot of people that went to these big box bar reviews come to me during this period of time, and they say something to the effect of, well, I did everything that my big box bar review told me to do. I memorized, I made flashcards, I created outlines, I did this and this and this. I took their sample tests, I got back my anonymous graded scores, but I'm pretty sure I failed. So I'd like to start studying now. That raises an interesting question I want to address. I generally say to people that if they think they're in that situation, they probably should not start studying before they get their test results, unless they are fairly and definitively certain that something went wrong during the test. If there was a technology failure, or you didn't write one of the essays, or you didn't complete a performance test, or you didn't finish the section of MBE questions in one of the two sections on Wednesday, if something of that nature happened, then I think you could say it's likely that you failed. And in that situation, I think you should start studying now. But for most people, studying right before you get your results back is not a particularly good idea. And the reason is that it extends your study period without any break. For most people, that's not a good idea. You need the mental and physical break. You need the distance and the time to be able to say, this is what I was doing and now I'm back at it. I certainly recognize that for those of you in the late reporting result states like California and Georgia, they put you under a lot of pressure, and it's very hard when you've got to then turn around and take the exam and you've only got 8 or maybe 9 weeks to study. But here's the good news. You already studied for the test, even if you took that big box bar review. So the next time around should be a review of the review. I don't know that it's as critical for you as a retaker as it might be for somebody that's just coming out of law school, or someone who's going to take the bar exam after 10 or 20 years away from the test. In a sense, I don't think you're at as much of a disadvantage as you might think. And truthfully, if you're taking the Florida bar exam, for example, you get your results 6 weeks after the exam, and that gives you an extra 4 to 6 weeks to study over someone from California. But the reality is you're in the same boat with all the other Florida bar retakers if you're taking the Florida bar, or all the other California repeaters if you're in that situation, or the New York repeaters if you're in New York. My general suggestion is don't restart your study now. Don't pull out your old materials. Don't pull out your outlines. Don't listen to lectures. Don't do flashcards. Somebody said to me after the bar exam, I'm going to do 50 MBE questions from now until the results come out. And I said, why? To what purpose? You don't know if you passed or failed. And what it means is at best it's unfocused, or at worst it's just miserably useless. I don't think there's any reason to put yourself through that. So why not take the time and do the other steps we've talked about instead? Talk to other people, reconnect, volunteer, have a life. And then if the results turn out to not be successful, all right, you deal with it. Now, we've got a video where I talk about 5 things to do if you did not pass the bar exam. But I think what happens is that we get into this mindset of assuming the worst because we're lawyers, and therefore we just basically assume that we've all failed. And then because we assume we failed, we just have to start studying right away. I have never seen anyone during my time as a teacher studying during this interim waiting period where I honestly believe it made a bit of difference for them in their ultimate results. Never, not once. Now, I know some of those people passed, but a lot of them didn't. And I actually believe that if they had just taken the time off, if they had taken their hands off the keyboard and went and did something else during this 4, 5, 6, 7 week period, they'd have been better off when their studies resumed. than by studying all the way through without taking any break at all. Now, I also realize that's a counterintuitive position. And I know there are a lot of people out there that say, I've got to start right away if I took the bar. Just start studying right away for the next one. Most of those people are going to be pretty crazed when they get to the next bar exam. And my view is that you can do a lot better things with these few weeks than to be studying for the test. That takes us to item number 5 on our list of 5 things you should be doing while you wait for your results. You should do your research. If it turns out that you did not pass the exam, those moments and hours after you get your results are really tough emotionally, and that's putting it mildly. It's not really the best time for most people to consider what their next step should be. Use this time to do your research. If everything I've told you doesn't convince you that you've got a chance of passing, then use this time to think about what you want to do if your results were not successful. Do you want to sit for another bar exam? Do you want to try and take your UBE score and apply it somewhere else? Do you want to change jurisdictions? If you were not successful, what comes next? Do you take the next administration of the exam? Do you want to look at different states? Now, years ago, we didn't say much about changing jurisdictions, but with the uniform bar exam, we've clearly got more opportunities. And we have tests that have changed their form, going from a state exam to the UBE and then being transferable in the scores. And those scores are different even though the test is the same. If you are sitting in California or Florida, maybe you want to think about taking the UBE instead so that you have the opportunity to get a passing score for those exams. And the point is that there are things that are happening in the bar exam that might make you want to say, I want to think about which exam I would take if I had to retake it, or where I want to take it, or when I want to take it. And this is particularly significant for retakers. If you get your results late in the season and you're thinking to yourself, do I really want to sit for the February bar exam or wait and start my studies for the July exam? That might be a better idea in certain circumstances. The point I want to make is the time to think about all those things is now. It is not the day the results come out. It is a good idea to prepare in advance, particularly if you've been someone who's taken the bar exam multiple times and you've used a big box bar review. There might be a small little voice in your head that sounds a bit like mine saying, hello, the emperor has no clothes. Those big courses don't work well. Big box bar reviews have a 30 to 35% pass rate nationally based on what they're doing. So if that's been part of your thought process, then the time to think about it, to evaluate and do your due diligence is now. And one of the ways you can do that would be to join me in our free webinar called How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam. We're going to put a link to it on this page as well. It's an on-demand webinar, and it gives you the opportunity to see a different path to success on the exam and to share with you case studies of successful students who prepared and passed their exams. It's a great opportunity to do some of that investigation if you want to dip your toe into that water while you're waiting for results. My point is that in any event, it's time for you to start doing your research about what might have to be done when the results come out. So think about the tests, the jurisdictions, the bar review courses. What kind of course do you want? And if you were in our course and you didn't use our coaching systems or some of our tools, maybe you want to consider getting ready to add those, to take advantage of tools like photo reading or paraliminals, or attend our boot camp offering that's live. Think about what you could do differently if you did not succeed. Those are the really good questions to ask, even though they're not particularly easy to answer, and you certainly will find it difficult to answer them in the emotion when results come out. So take the time to make the decisions that you might have to make later. Be ready for those. If the news comes out for you that you passed, that's great news. You can throw all that research away, or you can put it online, or you can tell people, hey, you should take Jackson's course. It's pretty good. But if not, if you didn't do well, if you didn't succeed and pass the exam, then you've got a plan that's been prepared in advance. And there's less disruption in your life. You just transition right into the work that you need to do. One of the things here that's so important is that you owe it to yourself to find out what your options are as you get ready for the next steps. If you're looking at our course, find out why our students, for example, are so passionate about what we do and why we get the results that we get. If you're in a big box bar review, think about that. What are people saying about that course? Did they love it? Did they like it? Did it work for them? Check it out and think about it now while you're still more rational than in the moment when maybe you don't feel quite so good. Having ideas about all of those things in advance of the results will give you a huge leg up when you have to pivot and get ready for the next test. I want to summarize by saying that I hope all of you who are watching have great results. I'm looking forward to that. particularly if you were in our course. And based on feedback from our students, I think we're going to continue to see good results from the people that were in the Celebration Bar Review courses around the country. We expect that even though the exams remain quite difficult and pass rates overall are continuing to drop around the country. If you took the exam and you don't feel good about what happened, I just want you to know that part of that is literally the trauma of taking the test, and much of that feeling will begin to recede from your brain. It'll move away as time goes on, and you begin to reconnect it to the world. That's a good thing and something I hope you'll do. I appreciate all of you who are watching today. I invite you again to join us on our free on-demand webinar, How to Make the Next Bar Exam Your Last Bar Exam, and let us know what we can do to help you prepare, if you need to, for the next test. But I do hope that when the results come out, they're favorable, and we see your name on the pass list in the very near future.